You're listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast with your hosts, Paul Stevenson, David Warren, and Greg Campbell. Let's see what's going on in the world of real estate today.
Hello and welcome to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast, your premier destination in the vibrant landscape of Ottawa's real estate market. I'm Paul Stevenson, your trusted mortgage agent level 2. I'm thrilled to be your guide alongside the no longer dynamic duo of real estate expertise, Greg Campbell, who's not with us today, and David Warren, who's beside me, also a mortgage agent level 2. And we're here to bring you the newest, the latest, the greatest in Ottawa's real estate market. We're also joined by some amazing guests today. So being our year-end show, we wanted to kind of give an expose to some other experts in the field. So we have other people coming throughout the day, but we're joined now by, I'll let them introduce themselves afterwards, but Kevin Cosgrove to my right, left, I guess, if you're watching, Luka Maric and Julie Patterson, who are all realtors here in the greater Ottawa area. And we wanted to kind of bring them in and allow them to share their expertise. So we are on video. If you're tuning in live, thank you. If you're listening after the fact, thank you. And why don't you guys take a second just to kind of introduce yourself and let us know maybe what markets you focus on, how long you've been in the business, and Kevin, why don't you kick it off here? Kick it off.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I actually didn't realize that you actually had the emphasis marked on your notes there. Hello, welcome to the...
Exclamation mark.
Thank you for the intro. Happy to be here. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, I guess. And I live in Carleton Place, booming metropolis. And so we service that area and also the greater Ottawa area as well, focusing kind of primarily on the west and central neighborhoods as well as Carleton Place. A bit about me. I've been in the business since 2018. We have a small team. We're 4 realtors total, and we have a full-time marketing and admin. And we actually have our own office right downtown Carleton Place, 122 Bridge Street. Below, we opened a coffee shop. So I've got actually some gifts for our hosts today and fellow guests, and we'll open later maybe. And the Foundry. And our real estate office is upstairs. We did a major reno during COVID. I've got 3 young kids, and my wife Katie's also an entrepreneur. So that's a bit about us.
We'll have to get into the renos.
Renos
later.
Yeah. I'm often punching my steering wheel when you guys are talking about renos and development costs and stuff. I'm right there with you guys. So
we've blown at least a few airbags, eh? Like,
oh my God! Yeah,
punching their steering wheels. So Luka is actually the Maric of the Campbell-Maric group. So maybe you guys are probably he's been on the show once before, maybe twice. Yeah. And Greg obviously not being here, we wanted to bring Luka in. So maybe give us a little bit about your background and how you and Greg connected, maybe.
Yeah, so I have a background in banking and finance, and then I switched over to real estate about 3 years ago. Greg and I started working together, and now it's turned into a partnership, and now you guys can see the better half of the Campbell-Maric group.
I was commenting on the hairline earlier. It's phenomenal. It is. Yeah.
The hairline is any more than 2 inches receded at the Campbell-Maric group, you're not allowed.
I
would never make it.
We divided the strong hair right down the middle of the table here.
Yeah.
This side we're good. We're spread. We're follicles.
We're on the Rogaine train on this side over here.
We were in with the lighting. Kevin and Julie, what about yourself? How did you come to know everyone here, and what's your experience in real estate?
Great question. Well, I used to work with Luka and Greg at what was once Blue Panda. Yeah. We had a great time, and I've now transitioned over to Engel & Volkers. Been there for a couple years now, and Dave and I once did a first-time home-buyers seminar, 4 or 5 years ago. Great turnout. Yeah. I think we got some business from that. Yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was actually, COVID now has been basically going on. This will be the 4th year.
Yeah.
So it'd probably be 6 years ago.
Yeah. And it was great. We should actually do this again. I haven't, that's probably the last one I've done.
Probably say
yeah, exactly. And I guess I focus on Ottawa Central. I also do love the occasional rural property and like the different nuances that come with that and acreage. But myself, I also do get into the bit of investment world. I've dabbled in private mortgages as well as flips, and also a landlord. So just doing a bit of everything in the real estate world.
Wow, the Swiss Army knife.
I love it. Now, if only you could use the Swiss Army knife now to open the wine.
Yeah. Did you get that open?
No.
Oh, no. I like beer anyway.
So you guys kind of focus on different markets. Kevin, specifically, you're kind of outside the city, Carleton Place, obviously near and dear to my heart.
That's right.
Out there often.
Number 47.
Number 47, Carleton Place, Junior B, doesn't matter. So yeah, tell us what's happening out kind of rural. What are you seeing out there in the valley?
That's funny. I mean, I think I was thinking through this a little bit, kind of coming on here. Like, I think just in a nutshell, before COVID, before the pandemic, the big spike, we'd say to Carleton Place, you'd be looking in maybe Canada or the West End neighborhoods. We'd say, you know what, come in CP, and that townhouse will be $75,000 cheaper, or you might get a single family home for the same price as a townhouse in Canada. Then COVID hit, and we kind of just equalized. Like, we're a bit of like, maybe like not an actual suburb of the city of Ottawa, but like we react that way in terms of pricing. Our average price, our average days in the market is very similar to a Canada, Stittsville, kind of central Ottawa, right? So we're basically now, we're in line, a couple points off, a couple $1,000s off average sale price of what happens in the city. So we react very similarly. Whereas pre-COVID, we used to be completely different, right? It was cheaper to come to Carleton Place. It was a bit of a different buying experience. I remember when we bought there in 2016, we were selling our townhouse, trying to sell our townhouse, ended up keeping it as a rental in Orleans. It was a Minto Hampton model. It was only a couple years old. Julie, everyone's shown these ones, right? So we had that for sale for $330,000, and we couldn't sell it. It was a balanced market, and maybe more of a buyer's market even at that point. And we rolled into Carleton Place and bought a single family home for the same price that we were selling our house for. So it was like, holy moly, this was amazing. And then that narrative's changed a little bit. Now it's a bit more equal. So yeah, that's a bit of the before kind of pandemic, and then post-pandemic, we basically react like a suburb of Ottawa.
But you guys were, during COVID, you guys were actually, I think,
we were pretty hot.
The fastest were Canada.
So Canada, Carleton Place and Arnprior were the two fastest growing communities in Canada, right? So we had the trophy $715,000 townhouse sales like, Ottawa did. We had, there's this story I like to tell about, there was a house for sale for $999 and change, right? And it was 4-bedroom. It was a beautiful house in Stillwater Bay. It was like a model home. And my client offered 1.2, and I hated the number. I'm like, guys, this is way too high. 1.2. They're gonna take my license away. And anyway, we submit this thing, massive deposit, whatever. The agent calls me like, she's just gonna send me the deposit instructions, and she's like, you're light. Pardon? So we were light, sold for 1.27. So like we were kind of reacting like the neighborhoods in Ottawa, right? You'd hear that same story, throughout the pandemic, here, and it was the same kind of thing in Carleton Place.
And so looking at the numbers of that place now, let's look at that 127 in Carleton Place.
Yeah.
What in today's market is that unfortunate?
I'm walking into that. I'm walking into that living room. I'm wearing a bulletproof vest. No, I mean, I don't want to think you're probably, you're over one, but it's not by much, right? Yeah. Like you're probably, $1,050,000 or something like that. Like, so big hit, I like to tell this story. I think it's really relevant. We sold a client's house in May of 2022, right? So last May, it was a townhouse. It was on Riddell Street, whatever. It's a townhouse, inner unit. We sold it for $685,000. And my clients at the time were like, oh my God, there was a $715,000 around the corner just a couple months ago. I'm like, oh yeah, well, this is the new market. We bought the neighboring house this January for $610,000, right? Same house. So we go from $715,000, one full calendar year later in a bit, down to $610,000, right? So, that $685,000 a couple months earlier looks really good in that context, right? So we've got sort of seen probably the typical drip or drop that we've seen in Ottawa, right? But again, these people paid 2019 $400,000 for the house, so even at $610,000, these are still good numbers, right? So yeah,
you've seen the same fluctuations in pricing
a little bit, like
in the valley, as far as like,
I think so. Like, that smaller, that lazy number of $100,000, give back kind of, I think if I'm through the city of Ottawa, we got a couple 4-buyer clients looking central Ottawa neighborhoods, and we're seeing detached homes in the 6s and 7s, low 8s. That would have been $1 million or high 9s or mid 9s, during the pandemic. We offered on these types of places, like the old kind of bungalows in the central neighborhoods like Carleton, things like that. They've come down quite a bit, right? So I think, in CP, it's, pretty similar to probably what's going on in the rest of Ottawa, just that regression kind of back down a little bit, maybe by 10% or so.
Is the buyer, do you find the buyer interest still similar, or people sitting on the sidelines you talk to that you were for your group? And again, like, I know you guys are more central and east, and then
it's interesting. I think it's a generalization that like buyer confidence has waned, obviously, right? And we're hoping to see, balance. So, I think the last couple of months, the interest rates is a good news story, right? I know we're, it's tough times for a lot of people right now. People are feeling the pinch.
Yeah.
But no, I think for the most part, buyer confidence is hopefully returning a little bit, But no, I haven't seen any difference in the Carleton-based market in terms of buyer demand than elsewhere. I will say, if anything, the interest is picking up on the Ottawa side. People that are maybe renting out of my 4 buyers that I'm working with now in the central neighborhoods. Only one of them has to sell. So these are 3 people that are either moving new to the city or they're renting currently, and they're waiting. They've been waiting to get into the market, and they're thinking that now might be that kind of sweet spot where you still get your conditions, you still have a bit of more of a transparent purchasing process, albeit in a high interest climate, but hopefully that's going to regress a little bit. I think they're realizing that the next couple of months might be that sweet spot before things get crazy again.
Yeah, I said that, I think yesterday or maybe today actually in one of my newsletters, that I think like the next 6 months.
I read the newsletter.
Good
newsletter.
Yeah. Probably going to be the best time to buy. And I know I said this last month, but I still think like this runway that we're seeing, this spring market, I think is going to be one of the better times in the last few years to buy. Like since COVID, definitely this 6-month window with rates stabilizing and coming down, and even the Bank of Canada saying like they're going to decrease rates in 2024. We're seeing fixed rates drop over the last few weeks. I know I was just reading this, and Greg just commented in the notes. Canada's top housing agency, CMHC, predicts that Canada is going to be short up to 4 million housing units by 2030. So that's over the next 6 years. They also estimate that that's going to result in a price growth of 89% in the next 6 years. So like all these things, this literally came out 15 minutes ago. So all these things considered, I really think like if you're a buyer sitting on the sidelines, there's thousands of buyers. Like I'm sure you guys are all dealing with people that have been shopping for 6 months, 12 months. I know I have people pre-approved that have been pre-approved for 18 months, just waiting. Like we're waiting, we want to see what happens. We're waiting to see where the market goes. Like this is as low in the trough, I think, as we're ever going to get, personally.
And that echoes the Bloomberg report from last week too, where they're predicting.
Oh, I read Bloomberg. Anyway. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, you're a Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Not a big deal over here, right? And they predicted, maybe pre-pandemic pricing coming back at some point. I'm not as bullish on the pricing going crazy, but I definitely think that once the buyer confidence returns and things kind of level out, maybe the prices don't go crazy right off the hop, but definitely it will be more competitive, right? You'll start being out, and that really warm weather that you're going to have right now as a buyer of all those conditions and more, that might be what we start seeing dissipate before the prices go crazy. But I think at some point, it'll kind of return.
What are you two seeing from your clients? Do you have a number that are sitting on the sidelines? Like, I guess kind of go in order. I'll start with you.
Sure.
But
So,
are they sitting on the sidelines because they're in for long haul renting or in their house, or are they waiting psychologically for rates to come down? Are they scared of the market or thinking that they're going to time it better?
Yeah, I think a lot of the people feel like they're trying to time the market.
Yeah.
And I had some clients that were looking like at the beginning of this year in the springtime that weren't quite ready, and then were kind of ready in the summertime. And I kind of had the mentality of kind of waiting until winter for the people that didn't need to buy. And a lot of my clients that I was kind of told to wait, now I'm kind of pushing a little bit more. Because I think right now, as you guys had mentioned, I think is kind of the low point. And up until the last couple of weeks, I've had like a lot of my buyers very, very dormant. But a lot of people are coming back out again now, starting to get phone calls again from some of my clients that have been active on searches, just kind of browsing, but never really reaching out to go out and wanting to see stuff. So, and like it's kind of Christmas time. I've done quite a few showings with clients that I haven't showed anything to in like 5 or 6 months. So I'm definitely kind of starting to see that pick up, as I think there's some fixed rate mortgages now that are below 5% now. Yeah. So I think that's kind of creating some confidence in the buyer pool.
Yeah. How about you, Julie?
Yeah, great question. I feel like there's a lot of people that have been sitting on the sidelines, not necessarily out there like looking at homes and offering. But now they're coming to the table and they're like, if I don't buy now, Julie, I feel like they're not going to be this low again. Yeah, so they've been sitting to watch. I had one client message me last week, and he's like, Julie, I wish I would have got that house. He's like, I feel like I'm not going to be able to afford the market again next month when rates go up. So I feel like there's this year has been really slow. People kind of dragging the heels, and I feel like they're back up. They're like, they want to play the game and they don't want to miss out, because the prices are now like affordable to some people, like compared to what it has been the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. We always say caveat, like obviously talk to Dave and Paul, get pre-approved, buy within your means. But like the thing is, that purchase price is what's going to age forever, and hopefully the rates stabilize and go down a little bit, right? So I think it's just a matter of, it doesn't always be doom and gloom in terms of the rates being really high. Just stay within your affordability and you shouldn't be in any trouble.
Yeah, and if you're running some of these numbers on rental properties, sure, at 6%, it doesn't make a lot of sense. 4% it does. So 2, 3, 4, 5 years on renewal, you're going to start cash flowing, and then you will kind of bought at a lower price. So I do see people realizing that for the first time. I feel like oftentimes we're like pushing, oh, good time to buy, good time to buy. Now I feel like the consumers are coming back and be like, I'm ready, let's do this.
I'm curious to see how much demand there is for people to kind of return to that homeowner dream, right? Because in a lot of countries, Europe, particularly, like homeownership isn't either a dream or attainable, or it's just not something that people even venture to do. Whereas Canada, where it's almost like you graduate from a university, you get a Bachelor of Arts, and you get a house. Yeah, right. It's like, and that has to happen in order, or you're some sort of failure, right? So it's like, I wonder if maybe the millennial generation is a bit more transitory, a bit more up and move, and especially working from home and what we've seen with COVID, if there will even be that resurgence to be homeowners again, right? I always say, like, do you want to be a homeowner? Is this a goal of yours? And I'm getting different answers from younger people.
It's too bad that people lost that feeling that they'd have that home ownership was attainable. I think where rates are at right now, but a lot of that is kind of the doom and gloom of headlines and people just feeling afraid of talking to anybody about what talking to one of you guys as far as a realtor, what's going on in the market, or talking to a mortgage professional that looking at their numbers, what they can maybe qualify for, what the actual true cost is. I know somebody that I spoke with this morning that's working with Kevin, they were going to rent, and they're like, you know what? It actually is going to be cheaper, the same price for us to buy, even at where the rates are at now. And so they're like, well, it's even for 2 and 3 years. This makes sense because we can principal pay down, and even if there's not an appreciation, it still is better than renting, is the way that they're looking at it. But it's unfortunate that over the past, really year and a half, that people have kind of gone from, with rates being low, it's all psychological, rates being low, money being free, everyone is qualifying for everything. And there's a huge housing rush because that's all that's in the market or on the news. Now it's been rates are high, people can't qualify. And so people kind of build on that negativity. I think now in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of articles about Bank of Canada. We've seen it in Bloomberg talking about they're predicting, Deloitte yesterday predicting 3 rate drops next year. Scotiabank expecting 4 rate drops for full 1%. Another Bloomberg economist expecting between 200 and 300 basis points, of 2 to 3% in a year. But the average when coming out of a recession or housing drop is 2.43% in a 12-month span. So we kind of look back, we're at a high right now for rates, and people are psychologically don't want to buy when rates are high, but they also don't think about, well, I can get into it for a 1 year period or a variable that I can switch to. These people are sitting on the sidelines, and we talk about it, and I know people reach out to us of just like, oh, you're always amp with the market. We don't always amp with the market, but at the end of the day, if your dream is home ownership, where people have kind of felt like they cannot buy, you can buy something even as an introductory property. It doesn't need to be your dream home, and everyone starts
a lot of pressure on the forever home, right? I've been 6 forever homes in my life. It's we just gas them, right?
Even first-time home buyers we talk to, they're they might be pre-approved up to 700,000, but they want to buy at 675. Or you could just, like you said, start with we were talking about a home off air before we came here that was it's a 3-bedroom townhome in Orleans, just over 300,000. That's a perfect starter home. That's the first home I bought was $212,000.
Paul, I'm such a fan of the podcast. When you broke down your journey through real estate, the red paper clip you started with and where you ended up, I love that breakdown. I thought it was really good.
But that's a journey many people forget take, right? And that was over maybe a 10-year time frame. I went from a starter home to what I see now as my forever home.
Palatial estate.
I want to go back to what I think Luka or Julie said, that we keep saying that this is a really good time to buy, but on the flip side of that, it's not a great time to sell. So we're also all these people that we're dealing with that are waiting on the sidelines are typically first-time home buyers, or maybe people that own their home and are looking for an investment property. And like you said, at 6%. Buying that investment property probably might not make sense for them. So,
however, it's a great time to upgrade. Yes. So right now, because if you look at it, if you're looking to get in $1 million price point, that drop percentage-wise, you are better off. Sure, you've lost money on your house, but upgrading, that loss will probably be your only time to get into that bigger house. So if you're looking to downsize, it might not make so much sense. But if you're looking to sell that like $600,000 townhouse and maybe get into $1 million house, like
For
those
900 or 850, right? Like, why not?
be able to do that again. So I think if people can look, yeah, sure, it's not a great time to sell, but if you're looking to upgrade and get into like another bracket, you're winning all day. Like, sure, your townhouse would have sold 100 grand more. You would have been paying an extra 300 grand probably on
And especially, Julie, if you're selling something sub 500,000, that market's still booming, right? Like, you know, like we talk about, like, you know, obviously like things are slower, but like there's certain price points that just move, right? And like, you know, if you are in a starter home buyer price point, then yeah, that moving up ability is definitely still there, because you're going to have an easy time on the sell side based on your price point.
Absolutely. So I do think that, yeah, it might not always make sense to sell. And maybe you've bought in 2016 and you just don't want to hold anymore.
Yeah.
You're still looking at this like, wow, that's still a pretty good profit.
Yeah,
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The from like a market where you're saying like that lower price point, what are you guys finding is the most active price point right now? That
Right around that 5,
Yeah.
no condo fees, like those 3-story townhomes or even like the older 2-stories, they're flying. If they're priced right, they go and they go quick. I'm seeing a lot of people picking them up for themselves or even townhomes. Like our prices have gone down, but the rents are insane right now. I'm shocked to see how high the rents have got in the last year. And I guess landlords probably have to demand it because of the interest rates, but tenants are willing to pay.
Yeah.
Oh, and Airbnb changing now too. Like I'm sure people that had Airbnbs or like Airbnb purpose units are now having to find tenants. as well,
Right. That's a good point too.
I do a lot of rentals. Like we do them. I don't know. We like it. I think from a business perspective, it helps us serve our landlords really well. My wife and I own rental properties as well, so it keeps us kind of in the game and relevant. But I find even helping qualified tenants, like these are future buyers, right? We saw multiple offers on one of our rental properties this week with everyone made, you know, the aggregate of $5,000 each, so $10,000 gross income coming in between the two couples that were applying for this bidding war on a rental for $3,000 a month. Everyone's credit score was above 700. Everyone had like stable income. You know, they're renting for various reasons, but like these are really qualified applicants, and they're definitely buyers in another market, right? So yeah, we're seeing a lot of quality. We're being really picky on the rental side, but we're getting people that come in there with high income, you know, 80 grand a year, 70 grand a year, and good credit.
And you're commanding the rents that are considerably higher than last year. I was quite shocked. I took a look at the numbers from last year. I was talking to a potential tenant, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of what they were renting for. I blinked, and now they're like $200-300 more in the span of like 9 to 12 months, which is shocking for like a Canada townhouse.
Yeah.
So what is a use Canada townhouse? What are they using? What are they renting for
I guess
right now?
like a nicer 2-story is like 2,500, whereas like the last couple of years were probably 22.
22.
And you might have been lucky if you had a really nice one to pull 23, and now it seems like 25, even for something that's not stunning.
Yeah.
Detached are close to $3 grand a month, like, you know, 28, 29, 3.
And is that because of demand? I mean, obviously supply and demand, but is that just like over demand for rentals right now in that single family, or?
Yeah, I guess it's
People
more, more people are probably renting right now or exiting the market, coming to Ottawa. Like there's just the demand for it, which is incredible. And I think landlords are also pushing for higher rates and getting them because of their mortgages.
Yeah.
I think they're putting it higher and they're getting their rate.
Or do you find from like an area, if you talked about investors before, if you're an investor looking to buy, like a mom and pop investor looking to buy a single family unit, would you say Canada is a really good area for that based on the rents that you're seeing and the price points, or is it and demand from like a type of employment base, or would you recommend other areas?
Canada's great because of the employment base, but I think if you like look at places like Carleton Place, what you can purchase it for, the rents are fairly similar to Canada. So if you're looking for a cash flow perspective, maybe going to Carleton Place or Embrun makes more sense. If you were like really want like a tech tenant in your house that makes really good income, I would say stay in the Canada area or any of the suburbs within.
Cash flow being the argument word here, that you have to put down 35% to flow cash right now. Right?
Yeah, buy cash and you'll always win the vote.
Yeah. But I'm with you though on the rents being high and, you know, inching closer. I mean, God, what they would have been super cash flow positive. You know, you imagine you're on the other side of these prices where you paid, you know, 450 or 500 for these townhouses in 2016, 17, 18, 19, whatever, and you're getting now all of a sudden 2,500. Holy smokes, right?
Yes.
Whereas right now, what we're finding with the multi-units, and you do a lot with investments as well, is that like unless there's like a triplex with a couple of vacancies, we're having a really hard time flowing cash unless we put 30, 40, 50% down, right? Just,
and you're entirely right. That's always been the case. That was like Ottawa 2018, a townhouse for 300,000. You still weren't cash flowing because the rents were 1,500.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be cash flow negative for a couple of years, but our rents seem to really pick up. So
at least they appreciate, though. The one thing about townhouses is that you get appreciation versus the multi-units that I find you might pay a price today and you'll sell for very similar, 4 or 5 years from now, because they don't appreciate like a townhouse, where a townhouse does have the opportunity if the market catches fire for them to go up 30, 50, 100 grand like we've seen, right?
Absolutely. And like on a different topic but still in renting, like I think it makes a lot of sense if you can only afford like to buy like 300,000-400,000, you want to be in the market, go buy a rental property where you can afford it and go rent where you want to live. Like you want to rent that big detached house, but get in the market. That's a good.
Go to Richmond. You can get one of those like Kaivan or Mattamy homes for like 2,800. They're like 2,000 square feet. Taj Mahal.
Yeah, exactly. So you rent that, but then also buying, so your foot's in the market. So I also think that's a great avenue. And honestly, I might even consider it myself. Looking at what I want to buy, I'm like, I don't want to pay the mortgage on that, but the rent on that isn't bad. But then I still have rental property, so I still am in the market. So I think there's different avenues that can work for people, and like getting them pre-approved, what works for them, what price point. They're like, I really wouldn't be happy at 300,000. Maybe it's a condo. They don't want that. Get your foot in the market and then rent where you want to live.
It's a weird, we're in a place right now where we're like everything is increasing rapidly. Obviously, we've seen inflation go through the roof. So our mindset of money has shifted so much that like 2,500 for rent seems reasonable. But 5 years ago, that would seem absolutely insane. Like who the hell's paying $2,500 for rent in a townhome?
I would have been, my mind would have been.
We're getting desensitized here.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
like really, like
100%. Like
people's mortgage have gone from 3,000 to 5,000 to 6,000, and it's just kind of like, okay, well, I guess that's what it is now. And people just become almost like numb to these
groceries, everything. It's wild.
Where it's wild to hear those prices and think like that's just the new norm. And that's not gonna retract. Rent's not gonna go back down to 1,800 a month anytime soon.
And it
if
happened
ever.
so fast.
Yeah,
like it really did happen fast.
I'm trying to think. I had a townhome in Barhaven. It was the first house I bought. I converted to a rental, and I'm trying to think. I sold it in 2018, February 2018, and I think I had rents on it. So I sold it for a record on the street at 330, and I had it. It was a tenant in it, and then they didn't pay for a while, and that was turned out to be a fun one. But I think I had it for rent at that time for 1,700. The same townhouses like after right now are going for, I think probably still going for like 600, 650, something like that. But rents would be in that 2,300 range, and that was 2018. So yeah, I think about rents even on like comparative on like places I've had is pretty funny.
It's like anything. Like I think
they go up no matter what.
They bought their house. It was $80,000. You're like, oh my gosh, what a steal! Like obviously everything increases.
Everyone pull out their inflation calculator.
Oh yeah. But I think we'll see things as things start to shift the other way. I think although the cost of living has gone up, I think everything else will eventually balance out, where everyone is kind of where they were a few years ago, but just kind of leveled up. Greg has a question here. I'm not sure if it's his or from someone else, but it says, can you shed any light on what it's like attempting to do a flip in the current market compared to pre-pandemic and throughout the pandemic? I think all of us at this table have done a flip of some sort. I think, Julie, you might have just finished one or are finishing one. So why don't you take the lead here and let us know what it's like.
Oh, great question.
During the pandemic, at least.
With clients, I'll start with that perspective. They're always like, oh, the prices are too crazy. This makes no sense. Mm-hmm. But the prices are increasing so fast. It was incredible. And like, I think sometimes I got a little bit scared or nervous what was going to happen. But the reality was, if you could pick something up that needed work, by the time you were done, like 6-7 months, and you did the lift, you're also gaining an extra 5 to 10% on market.
Just by
So
owning
like
it, yeah.
just by owning it, sometimes by the time I could have done there could have been no renovation, and there would have been.
Absolutely.
So the timing, like I just like was very lucky during the pandemic and just kept hitting it on like the new increase. So I think I did 6 during the pandemic, which honestly, if I could go back, I would just go all in and just do more. I was very nervous, always scared that everything was going to crash the next day. And even if it had, it probably would have been okay because nothing goes down quickly. Now today, very different. Your profits look very different. I think before it was like an easy 100 grand on your flip. Now I think going back to pre-pandemic, you're probably looking at 50 grand unless you could do excellent on the buy. And that's kind of what I'm seeing now. You're not getting the appreciation, and you also have to be conscientious to get the flip done quick. Before I could drag my feet because the market is increasing. Now there's
Also, like, 1.5% interest rate. Your hair's not on fire.
Well, that's actually, it's funny. I have variable mortgages. I know what interest costs. When I ran the numbers, I'm like, wow, $20,000 in interest. I knew it was expensive, but it wasn't until I sat down there and the numbers like that really changes your profit margins.
Yeah,
like
you're carrying it for 6 months or
before variable 1.6, now it's 9% on an open.
Private money, it could be in a private money on these flips too, right? You never know, right?
Well, even on like the A side, which the current one I have we went with an open mortgage because it made more sense. There was no fees to break, so that's 9%. So money's gotten very expensive, as we all know, but it was very eye-opening. And I think it's still a great time. The profits you're probably going to be like 50 to 75, whereas before it was like easy 100, 200, 300, something crazy. Because people will pay for pretty. Like people wanted the pretty thing. So they were also bidding beyond the last sale. So it's hard to like even figure out the price because you're like, okay, this one sold for $580, well, maybe we'll land here, and then yours is so much nicer, and then the price increases, and then you're at like $675, and you never would have dreamed that you would end there. So
flips are tricky too because you never know at the end, like you said, like there might be a stigma with that house. Like I know in Carleton Place there's a lot of older homes, like century homes that people update, and sometimes there's stigmas with those, or people knew the person that lived there before, and it's actually like they still see it as a $300,000 house, but now it's 600, and there's like those weird kind of stigmas on flips where some people love it and they want it turnkey, it's beautiful, it's all updated.
What's behind the wall?
Or did they just put lipstick on it and you're not sure of the reno and you're like, it looks good, but what's actually happening there? And obviously inspections and stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that's the scary part of during the pandemic is people weren't. Now buyers can inspect them, and you can kind of like, if you have like somewhat of a trained eye, you can kind of see where maybe corners had been cut. And whereas like, but now you have your due diligence. You can go buy something, have an inspector tell you if it's good or bad. And before, people were just going in no conditions.
Yeah.
I think home buyers in general, and you guys would know this better than I, but home buyers are lazy. Like they like the shiny thing. They don't care. Typically, like I always find they don't care about, you can tell them there's a new roof, new HVAC, like new, any of the inner workings. They're like, yeah, great. But it's got quartz.
Yeah.
It's nice. Like those lights real nice. And they don't care. They're like, oh, but there's no heat in the winter. Yeah, I don't care. The lighting's real nice.
I actually have one season free. You can't actually be here other than July.
The subway tile, right? We have one client who's a flipper, and we do about 3 a year with him, and he focuses primarily on condos, right? Because we find condos being like those row unit condos, like the Draper, Woodfield, they're amazing. We just did one on Cotters. And what we find is great about those is that you don't have to worry about roof, windows, foundation, all that's Condo Corp envelope. So you can literally do just a cosmetic flip on the inside. And there's that confidence that the buyers have on that like they just look at the SAT certificate and they might inspect it as well. But it's a little bit more straightforward. And, we're picking these things up low threes. And there was a time we were selling these, 425, 430, 440, hit a home run 500. We've had whereas recent example, 305 purchase price, 397.5 exit price carried for about 3 months. At high interest rates and things like that. And then, but he does all the work himself. So, he's still going to be on the right side of that, probably be a 30, 40K, gain for him on that one.
And I would say everyone wants these sexy big projects.
No.
The I just did with
No, you don't.
you don't. You want a condos aren't they were my bread and butter, and they're easy to sell. They're easy to fix up. You don't have to worry about all of these things. But
And there's always a market in that price point typically, right?
yeah, and people don't want to touch them. Every time I have a buyer, I'm like, oh, let maybe get into these condos, entry level. You can still pick them up 280 to 300. Nobody wants it. They want no condo fees.
And the pride in ownership in these areas too, because these used to be largely tenant occupied, but now it's first time home buyers that are in there. So you start seeing the welcome signs out front, and they're just this is very nice neighborhoods now. And
Rental properties that are quite beat up, so you can still kind of pick them up at these prices that make sense.
A lot of the home buyers, they don't either have the savings to do the renovations as well, or they don't know about certain programs like a Purchase Plus where they can get in and do the work, leverage the bank for it. And so buying something that has been redone on those condos at that entry level price point, it is attractive. I know buddy of mine, we've done a number of flips as well. We've condos we've always done well in them. This is well before the pandemic when we couldn't rely on appreciation. So we'd have to be in and out in 5 weeks with full reno, and it would be a lot trickier because you're having to run your numbers very tightly and run
this
the
was the
show
longest one
very
I've ever done.
tightly.
This was 3 months on the market, and I every day I thought I was getting fired because this was he's in and out in 3 weeks. He's done. I got the keys. I photo staged 3 weeks later. So this was a longer experience on the market than we've ever had in these condo flips.
Are you guys finding that you are getting people that are able to get approved for mortgage, plus type of loans? Because I think that's one of the reasons why I've been seeing a lot of people that go for the prettier homes and stuff like that is, they get, max of whatever they can afford. And then there's no room for them to get any more money on the Purchase Plus side. Quite a few first-time home buyers that are like, oh, if I get this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get furniture, let alone, be able to have money to do renovations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really you're qualifying the same way. So the Purchase Plus programs are an insured program, so you're really capped at what your qualifying ratios are. You can't exceed that. There's no exceptions to be made or anything like that. But really what is allowing those buyers to do is instead of looking for properties that are move-in ready, so to speak, they're finding something that is maybe an old landlord property, like you were saying, getting a good price and being able to then maybe they qualify for $450, so they're able to buy at $375 instead and put 75 or 50 grand worth of rentals, because you can actually get upwards of 100,000 in that improvements amount as an insured product. So it does open up that kind of that buying range. Instead of buying at 450 trying to tack on, you're able to kind of shop either move-in ready or not, and it's kind of allowing you to give that more flexibility. So it's not a matter of them qualifying necessarily under that program for more. It's just they're now opening up their search parameters, if you will. That's what I find. Yeah, it's just not it's not a program that the banks talk about. The banks, the major banks, don't do a good job of it. The challenge that the banks have is that they look for money in savings for them to be able to pay for those renos. They'll approve them for that Purchase Plus, but they need, let's say it's 50,000. They need to show 50,000 in savings before they'll approve them under that program, basically that they have to pay for it up front, show the paid invoices when the rentals are done. Whereas there's other banks out there that don't have that, where they will allow you to get it, because a lot of times you're going into that program because you don't have the savings.
Yeah, you don't have.
So a lot of people don't take advantage of the programs. If you go to Big Green, Big Red, Big Blue, they don't. They look for the money ahead of time. First-time home buyers don't have that. They have their 5% down, their 10% down, and that's it. So these programs through other lenders, which are A banks, is allowing them to do the renovations, tell their contractor, hey, when the work is done, somebody's going to come take a look at it. As soon as you tell me it's going to be done, we're going to line up somebody to come in to say that it's done, and you'll get your money within 24 hours. And as soon as they're done the work, they just line up. The money's released through their lawyer to pay that invoice. But it's allowing for a lot more flexibility, whereas a lot of people get turned off because they go to their bank that they maybe bank with, and they don't do these programs really well. They're not as flexible, and so I think that turns off a lot of people of really kind of taking advantage of it, because it's such an amazing program that I don't know why it's so underused.
And I think there's a lot of buyers that get turned away from those $300,000 condo towns. I've had some of my investor clients do very, very well on them. I know Julie did one that I actually showed to a client of mine that was the one that she mentioned that she sold for in the 5s, which at the time was like insane.
Bought it for $270. So
she was like, I was thinking like maybe like $450 or something. She's like, and like at the time when her and I were chatting, I was like, no, but like at the time we're like, well, like that would potentially be a good price, but they wanted to put it on market and they ended up getting over 400,
I think,
which was amazing.
I think, well, initially, I think we're like, maybe we'll sell it for 400. Maybe. Like when we bought it, I think in September, it was a hoarder house. And we said we'd like assume all their stuff. It was a clean hoarder house, surprisingly, but
well organized boxes, labels.
It really was. It was actually a really funny story. The guy was obviously probably had some struggles. So closing day, he's still in there. We're like, buddy, like we said, you could leave your stuff. Like, just do you mind? He's like, I just can't find my denture. He's like, if you see a lower denture, can you call the listing agent? If I see a lower denture, I will let them know. But like, this deal's closed. Like, grab what you need, please.
Everything's going out in a shuffle.
Yeah, we're like, the whole house is packed. And I'm like, what else? How much stuff can you really grab at this point? Like, we'll keep an eye out for your denture. Never did find it, actually.
Yeah, I would say that the Purchase Plus program, two things. One, to Julie's point, like most first-time homebuyers are not looking for a massive project unless they are a tradesperson or they're in construction or they're actually looking specifically for that. But the second part of that is that probably 99% of first-time homebuyers or even homeowners in general have no idea that this program exists. Like I would say probably even, half of realtors probably don't even know the program exists, especially newer ones. So you guys obviously know, Dave and I know, but most people even in the industry don't know that the Purchase Plus Improvement program exists. So clients are obviously not going to know, which means that there's all this basic money, I don't want to say money, but like equity, forced equity appreciation left on the table that people are not taking advantage of just because of a lack of information, lack of knowledge. So it's our duty, really, and every agent's duty, that if you see a client, you're pre-approving them, like asking them those questions, like what is your goal with this property? Like if you have a specific type of property in mind, if they say, oh, we're looking for a turnkey solution, then, that's obviously a little bit of an easier softball to say, oh, well, might not be turnkey, but you can customize your home however you want. This is how you do it. And, you can have those conversations, but most clients aren't thinking to ask like, oh, if I buy a dilapidated home or a beaten up home or a hoarder house, like, can I fix this up with the bank's money? Like, how does that work? Like, nobody's thinking of that unless they're really outside.
That's like dilapidated might be the wrong term for Purchase Plus, right? You still have to appraise, but we oftentimes when we're introducing clients over to Dave, it's like, hey, I want you to touch on the Purchase Plus here because we're definitely in the mid-century modern neighborhoods. We're in that price point we think to be confirmed by you, obviously. And we come across enough that need a new kitchen and a bathroom, maybe like that. Like we think this could be in scope, and then we have that conversation on the front end, and then we have that lens when we're out buying. We know we can afford, and we know that we can take care of $20,000-$30,000 of renovations quite easily with the Purchase Plus.
But it's not even for like cosmetic stuff. That nice shiny thing like roofs, HVAC, septic. You can really kind of spread it out. So if, depending on where they're looking, sometimes the property with like a septic that's shot, instead of them having a couple of $20,000 to replace septic, which is typically out of pocket, they know it ahead of time, can float it under that program as well.
Yeah, really
so it kind of gets that deal done for them and for their agent where it necessarily might not have happened.
And the really cool part about that is like, as a Canadian, that's like one of the main ways you can get ahead in life. Like if you can buy something, like even if it's a coat of paint and you're willing to just like put a bit of work in and make it look nice, that's the only money you'll ever make tax-free. Obviously you need to stay in your house, but if you're willing to commit to this for 3 to 5 years, then you've already there's equity in your property, and that's how you can kind of get where you want to go. If you're willing to put in some sweat equity, do some financing with the bank, get your Purchase Plus, can really move you up where you want to go in life.
Be strategic about it.
Yeah, starting with nothing. Like you can start with a $300,000 condo townhouse and end up in $1 million house in 15
Paul
years.
did this. Paul did it. He did it. We should be able to insert that clip. Like it's good.
Yeah.
I did listen to that.
You what, sorry?
That was really like your first episodes, wasn't it?
Oh, wow. So, yeah. Long time ago.
60 episodes ago.
I fell off the bandwagon for a bit here, but I like at the first year, I think I listened to like almost every episode. Good, great.
Yeah, no, Cole's Notes basically like bought my first townhome. That was 2011, so 12 years ago now. It was $212,000, as I said. I didn't do any renos to it. I just bought it. It was actually part of Paul Rushforth's Love It or List It or All for Nothing. Sorry, was the name of the show. It was like this HGTV type TV show. And basically the premise of the show was they had two homeowners compete against each other to see who could do the best renovations to force appreciation for the least amount of money. So it was
just a shorter version of the story.
like to the point where they were having like garage sales and like bake sales to try to get money to use for the renovations. So it's hilarious. So the renovations when I got in there were like updated, but we're talking about lipstick. It was
The base sale.
it was the cheapest lipstick on the cheapest granite, you know. So I stayed there for 7 years. It appreciated pretty much nil. Like when I sold it for $217,000, and I put in $8,000 before I left just to update the kitchen, like countertops, cabinets. I updated both washrooms actually, but they were like smaller washrooms. So I think the total rent was like $8,000 to $10,000, and I sold it for $5,000 more than I bought it for 7 years prior, and I thought that was a steal. But because of the principal pay down, just from paying down principal, I had 30-40 grand in equity. I used that for the down payment on another home that was a semi, and it was $340. I took advantage of the purchase plus. I did $40K in renos plus like used some of the equity I had in the other place to kind of fix it up. I probably put in maybe 65 grand, and then I kept that home for 2 years. Sold in 2020 for $625, so almost doubled the value of that home. And then used some of that equity, did the same thing, bought another home. It was kind of like on a beautiful street, but older home, old bungalow, meticulously kept, but dated. Like you smelt the must as you walked in. You're like, oh, it smells like my grandmother's like drawer, but everywhere. So we did like a full remodel, gutted it, fully rebuilt it. And now to me, it's like my favorite type of home is like a old bungalow brick, like this sort of background, but remodeled, updated. So that's what I did. And now that's, currently my forever home. We'll see what happens in the future, but I love it.
It's a current home.
It's a dawn.
It's not the forever home. It's a current home.
But
the pressure on us.
Well, yeah, it is. But all this to say, like I got into that initial $212,000 home with minimum, like with a 5% down payment. So my original investment is, $10,000 basically.
It's the red paper.
And now I've built that to over 10 years, basically like a forever home. So going back to the original conversation of like just get into something, like get into the market, start building that equity, and like every time you're paying rent, I know we say this all the time, but like every time you're paying rent, you're essentially just paying someone else's mortgage. So if you can pay that mortgage yourself, at least the money eventually is going to come back into your pocket in the form of appreciation and everything else, right? Principal pay down and so on.
Well, rent's 100% interest, so even
Yeah, right.
interest rates might be 6 or 7%, but if you're paying rent your whole life, you're never going to own or get any appreciation on that, right? So I think it's a really great point. Is just like anything else, real estate specifically, is just get your foot into the door and just get started with something, right? Because once you get in, you're going to learn a bunch of stuff. I'm sure you learned a lot of stuff while owning that first place for 7 years that you then took that knowledge, transferred, and eventually now you're living in $1 million house that you paid 6 something for. You got in at a good time, but you would have never got to that had you not just gotten into that first place. And like most people that bought in the last 7 years probably doubled their money. You only made $5,000, right? And you still are where you are today. So I think that's a really great point.
Greg has a comment here. Greg's in the heavens, just shining down on us here. Hi, Greg. So Greg says, is there a general feeling from the group that we're officially at the bottom of the market? And do we have any thoughts on predictions for percentage increase in home prices and sales volume in Ottawa for 2024?
Well, I mean, I think traditionally in the last couple of years, like our fall, like getting into late fall and where winter's starting November, December, the market's down and then it peters up. Same thing happened year before that.
January, February. Those were the ones we were chasing. We were chasing those comps from those early sales in January, February.
I see craziness, but I do think it'll pick up. And I feel like Greg's been talking about this a lot. Like the people that are listed now not selling, they're probably going to get their price in 2-3 months. I don't think there's going to be a crazy takeoff, maybe a bit, but it's not going to be like it was the years before where December and then February itself for $100,000 more than it did the December. So that's my prediction.
Okay. I'm going to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm
bullish?
looking for here? Bullish on the market, and optimistic. So I think like last spring, like going this past spring, I thought was going to be not as busy as it was, and it was pretty insane. Like for me, it started pretty much in March and ran all the way through summer and then slowed down a little bit in the fall. And then obviously going into Christmas, it slowed down a lot. But I think with now the anticipation and the federal bank in the US also saying that they're going to be cutting rates next year, I think that's going to create a lot of confidence in the market. And I think a lot of the people that are not listing now are going to be selling in the spring. And I think people are going to start getting FOMO again. And I think we're going to have a really busy spring market. And I think the prices are going to probably jump up probably like 5 to 10% in the springtime.
I think I'm not sure where I think prices will go. I definitely think like I'm bullish on transaction volume increasing and confidence returning. I think we right now a lot of the inventory is on the market. I mean, again, it is December, almost Christmas, right? So people are pulling them off, maybe relisting in the spring. But I see a lot of estate sales. I see a lot of people that have to sell right now in the market. That's why they'd be on the market right now. That's why they would list tomorrow, kind of thing, right? Because they kind of have to. But I think a return to confidence and transaction volume, I don't know if I see a big jump in prices just yet, but I think just, that fact that people will start to transact in real estate again, I think is going to be a big win for our industry. And I think it hopefully gets a lot of, Canadians into homes as well.
I think the latter half of this year, from from looking at it from the finance side, which drives the transactional side, I think we'll start to see rates come down quickly in the latter half of the year. It won't be so much over the winter and into the spring, but that May, June, like that June announcement, we'll see if before a drop then, and will be a very quick drop. And I think as we lead into that, just as we're already seeing now, in a lot of articles from Financial Post and the Globe and Bloomberg and BNN are positive of Bank Canada, Tiff Macklem saying we're done with rate that he's saying even last week at a conference at the Toronto Club, was that they're going to start dropping in 2024. So right now it's all been negative in the news about rates. Everything's psychological from a rate perspective, like we talked about earlier. So as the news cycle changes, and right now there hasn't been news of the big six dropping their fixed rates, which they've been doing it quietly. But once the general public starts to see in news headlines of rates coming down, will drive buyer confidence. And I think that fall market and through the rest of the year, I think kind of that April onwards is going to pick up extremely quickly. Everyone that's on the sidelines has just been pent up demand, people renting. Again, we talk about it all the time, but immigration hasn't slowed down. It's not slowing down either. These people need to move somewhere, and they're coming in with very well-paying jobs. Professionals, people it's not your typical new to Canada, individual that you kind of think about in years past. It's doctors, it's accountants, it's, engineers, high tech, and they're coming in as well with big sums of money. And so I think we're going to see that latter half of the year as rates come down, people that were looking at upsizing, are waiting. Like they're, like you said earlier, they should be doing it now. They're not going to. They're going to wait for things to pick up. And I think that we're going to see a very busy market. I quite don't know what price point percentage increase, but I think it's going to be a very hectic, latter half of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with all of you. We'll just leave it at that. No. I think I agree. I think rates, as we see them come down, I think there's going to be some timidness at first, just so people, as I think Luka, you said, waiting to see that it's actually a stable market. But I think with the last three rate announcements, holding rates, I think with fixed rates coming down, I think, as you said, more positive news coming out. There's more listings. There's more options. It kind of gets people excited. And we see it every year. Over the holidays, people are with family. They're planning for 2024. What's our goal for this year? What, New Year's resolutions. Everyone hits the ground running in 2020, early in the year. It seems January, February, the last couple of years have always been some of the busiest months, just with, they usually close in April or May, but they're usually out buying in January, February. So I think we're going to do something very similar. And I don't know what the end of the year is going to look like, but I think that downhill kind of pace of the market is going to cause a lot of people to kind of have that FOMO and be like, okay, we need to get in, or this is going to run away. It's going to run away from us again. Whether or not it does, I don't think really matters. I think it's going to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy where people are we're going to miss out. Then they have to get in, and then that's going to fast forward the market even further. And then if rates come down, it could just be that perfect storm, as I said, where this next 4 months is kind of the unknown. We're all kind of unsure. But if we have this conversation again in April and the market's on fire and we're like, well, we told people they should have bought, like, it's too late at that point. So like this is like when it's quiet like this, when it's kind of the quiet before the storm, at least that's the way I'm seeing it. And we've seen it over the last, like, you know, I've been a broker now over 10 years and we've seen these cycles come up and down where anytime there's this calmness, that pent up need is going to go somewhere. It doesn't just vanish. Like it just gets fast forwarded or you know, move forward, bumped forward to the following year or the following year after that. So it's still, the demand is still there. It's just a matter of where does it show itself, right? Like, is it going to show itself in January? Is it going to show itself in July? It's there. It's a matter of when. And I think with the way the market is heading, we're going to see a perfect storm in that June, July space where rates are lower, people are confident in the market, and supply is low, and it's just going to explode. That's my opinion. I don't want to give percentages because I was very far off this year. In January, I'm like, oh, there's going to be 20,000 transactions. I think I said 5 to 7% increase in value, which is actually fairly accurate, but my transactions were way off. I think like in January, I'm like, oh, I'm killing it. I'm going to hit the nail on the head, and I'm like 8,000 short, I think, on the transactions, but price point was accurate.
I think renewals will really help too, right? Because I think some of the stat you guys might be able to verify is just roughly speaking, like 75% of mortgages are sub 3%, right? So you got all and a lot of the terms and conditions of these really low interest rates were like a lack of mobility, a lack of portability, a lack of things like that. So once you see these people come up for renewals, and now all of a sudden you're staring down the barrel like 5%, 6%, like everybody else, now all of a sudden you can move for the sake of it, right? Because the thing is, you're losing that mobility, you know, whether it's laterally or up or down or the side, because, you know, why would you upset the apple cart? Why would you take on a new blended rate that's going to be higher when you have, you know, till 2025 or 2024 to do anything? So I think once there's an equality of what everyone's paying right now, because like, you know, anyone new obviously is paying 5 to 6%. Anyone old is, you know, Gucci 1.6, right? So there's a big dichotomy between current and new. But once we level out that playing field, because, you know, to your point, pent up demand, those are people that aren't in right now, that on the sidelines, waiting to get in, waiting to take on one of these new mortgages. We have all these people that, you know, maybe would want to move, like the FOMO that Luka mentioned earlier, that once there's a balance, you know, once you move and it's going to cost you the same, you'll start seeing that, you know, size up, size side down, you know, all those different things. So I think that'll be a big thing too, is once we see some equality across the spectrum of mortgage holders.
Should we take a
little
siesta? Yeah, a little siesta.
We're gonna take a 5-minute nap, and yeah, we're gonna reload, little bio break, and we got a few more guests that we're gonna bring on. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. And thank you to you three. I'm not sure who's staying or going, but if any of you leave, awesome having you here. And if you stay, welcome back.
Did you want to do your little gift pass?
Oh, let's do the gift.
Right here, under your chairs.
All right,
under the chairs.
Just one up here to the camera so everyone sees.
You want to let us know what we got here, Tom?
Well, okay, so on the inside,
I'll open the card out.
Okay, so inside is coffee from our roaster. So we use Mighty Valley in our coffee shop. So
Kevin's coffee shop.
Yes, 122 Bridge Street, Foundry Coffee Bar. So then upstairs we have the Foundry Collectives, Cold Tea Space. You Were a Fool in the Rain. So they're all song titles. And they're single origin coffees, direct trade. So, you know, there's fair trade, which is, you know, good, but direct trade is a little bit better, puts a little bit more money in the producer's pocket. So it cuts out kind of some of the middlemen that kind of exist in the fair trade world. And Jared's our roaster. He's absolutely phenomenal. He actually works for us as barista as well.
Amazing.
Jared is the bomb. Jared from Small. He has so much swagger. He plays basketball, and he
used to coach my son basketball. Like, hilarious. I ran into him at Foundry. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, dude, yeah, I'm also a coffee guy. I'm like, wow, all right.
We're really proud of the coffee. And then, we got some of the dad hats. It looks great. Like, Luka, you shouldn't be covering up that hair ever. No, but if you're, right. Looks great. So, thanks for having us on. I was really excited about this. And,
thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks to producer Steven as well.
All right, we'll be back. Give us 5 minutes.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe because we'd really like that.